Right on, writers, and welcome to the Books by Adrian author platform. This is Tuber Book Club, where we read, discuss, review books written by author tubers. Today, we are covering this bad boy right here, The Dryad's Crown by David Hopkins. It is a fantasy epic. It starts off very much like a fairy tale. It's a very interesting read. I have a lot to talk about with it. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's get into it. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Adrian Santiago. I am an author. I am the author of the MYTHIC series, a sci-fi fantasy epic series that starts with the novel Shadow of the Spark. It also includes a short story prologue called The Death and Rebirth of Bella Erdman. This covers the last few hours of life of Bella Erdman, and she has a nice little psychedelic experience as a farm girl on the city town for the first time, and that of course leads straight into the mystery of who killed Bella Erdman, which you will solve with our heroes in this one. Will the help of a witch and a bounty hunter be enough to catch a prolific serial killer, or will Migdalia Vandersea's career end before she can close her first case? This is my novel. Go check it out. Please pick up a copy and enjoy. But we're not here to talk about that. Today we're talking about The Dryad's Crown. I am going to give very quickly some spoiler-free thoughts on the book, and then I will start the parade of bringing in my panelists. They will tell you who they are, where they're from, what they have going on, and their thoughts, non-spoiler thoughts, on the first 4 books in this collection, because that's actually what it is. They're not even chapters. They're like little novellas. It's very interesting. And then we are going to turn to the chat before we go into spoiler talk. So while we're doing our introductions, if anyone in the chat has any non-spoiler questions that they would like addressed, please throw them in there and use, what are we using? We're using spoiler-free questions, SFQ. If you use that, I'll be able to find it. Not that there's a lot going on in the chat just yet. People are just starting to come in. Hello. We'll say hi to you guys in just a minute. So, non-spoiler thoughts on The Dryad's Crown by David Hopkins. This is a very, very interesting read for me, and also the first time that I've actually gone through an audiobook all the way through so far. I've tried audiobooks in the past, and as my ADHD brain goes, I can't really retain much of it, and I have to keep going back and rereading, and it's the whole thing. So this time, however, I feel very happy to report that I very much enjoyed the audiobook. And it helped me get this done in time, because I am a notoriously slow reader, and you can control the speed on audiobooks. So that really, really helped. Now, I have a feeling that we'll have a lot to talk about, but that we'll breeze right through it, because I have a lot of notes in the first book, and they're mostly pretty critiqueful notes in that first one. And then after that, I had very, very few notes, because it just kind of sucked me in from books 2 forward. I think the reason that I clashed a lot with the first book is because it reads very much like a fairy tale and not so much as a novel per se. It reads like an old folklore fairy tale from long ago, and in such, it's very, very brief with what's going on and moves on to the next thing. It tells like a lifetime worth of story in one tiny book. And I almost expected the main character to be done by the end of that first book, and we be on to whole new characters in the second one, because it covers that much. So most of my critique in that first book is about there being a lot of telling and not so much showing, and I can kind of clash with that. And I think the only other thing is it being this kind of fantasy, old world, old-timey kind of story. Everybody speaks very eloquently, and that usually makes it very difficult for me to connect with the characters, because everybody just speaks so officially. I don't know. But like I said, after I got through that first book, I really, really got sucked into it. And I grew to very much enjoy the main character, who I had a lot of problems with in that first book. So we're going to get all up into that. Let's go ahead and bring in my co-hosts for today. We're going to start with the ever lovely Emma Bennett. Hello, Emma. Tell us all who you are, where you're from, and your non-spoiler thoughts on books 1 through 4.
Okay. My name is Emma Bennett. I'm a UK-based writer. I generally write kissing books, like my latest book, which is called A Christmas Truce. It's been out for a couple of weeks now, and it's available in eBook and paperback as well. I also write children's picture books and now non-fiction for writers, and I'm a freelance developmental editor and a writing coach. I really enjoyed the beginning of this book, actually. I love the fairy tale feel. It was lovely, and it kind of took me into this world straight away, which I really enjoyed. So completely the opposite of you, Adrian. I really liked the main character as well, and I read it on Kindle, which is quite unlike me, but I do have Kindle Unlimited for a few months, and it was on that, so I thought I'll do that. So it's funny for me because normally I'd have a book with post-its and things, but I don't. I have it on Kindle. So if I'm looking down a lot, it's because I'm trying to find certain places and stuff that I've saved in that. But yeah, big fan. Really, really liked it.
All right, very nice. It's like we're both kind of stepping outside our comfort zone with reading this one. You going on to the Kindle, me going on to the audiobooks. That's nice. We're trying new things. This is good. This is good in 2023 going into 2024. Yay. All right. Yeah. Next up, the Votawesome Bethany Vota.
Hi, my name is Bethany Vota. I write short story collections and thrillers. My thoughts on this book, I actually really like it so far. I have a few qualms with just some of the writing style, but like I can get past that. But like Adrian was saying, the first section, the first chapter, if that's what we're going to call them, it was a breakneck speed. But I kind of like that in the sense of certain fantasy books, especially with one that has so much going on with like the gods, the religion, the druids, the politics, and multiple characters. Sometimes the world building can like feel more like an encyclopedia at the beginning, and because we were just moving so fast, I felt like the world building came on fairly naturally, in the sense that we were introduced to a lot very organically, but that's because we were going through the timeline so fast. And then kind of like what Adrian was saying, book 2 on, I felt like I had a better handle of the world and the characters, and I'm all in. One thing that I found lacking for me personally was some details of just like setting, you know, some sensory details, some immersive aspects of the story, because for a while I'm like, I have no idea how old this character is. I don't know what she looks like. I don't know what season we're in. What are they wearing? What's the primary, like, I don't know, agricultural background? Like we've got like shepherd, and I have an idea of what a shepherd might look like, but just I needed a little bit more. I felt like we fell into that white room syndrome a little bit, but I'm excited to see where this story and the characters take us.
Very, very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of those same feelings with like the white room stuff. Like, where are we? I don't think we got a description of our main character until book 2, if I remember correctly. It's it's very unusual. All right.
And I'm not the type of person that needs like a ton, but I was just a little bit.
Give me a little something.
Yeah.
All right. Last but certainly not least, the running man himself, Ben Pick.
Hey everyone, I am Ben Pick, also known as Writing to Write, I guess, or that's my YouTube channel as Writing to Write. I have a couple books behind me, but we aren't here to talk about them. So my thoughts on the Dryad's Crown. Again, we keep saying books, but each book is basically just a chapter. The chapters are pretty thick, but we've gone through books 1 through 4, and that's about halfway through whatever current version of Dryad's Crown. I completely disagree with everything Adrian said. So this is going to be a very, very contentious episode. I loved the world building. I think I was fully immersed in this world. I was fully immersed in the history, in learning about the legendary hero Branchius, and this epic battle that happened before the story even took place, and like all these other details. So I agree with Bethany and Emma where there is a scene when the kids are kind of going into a cave to unlock or uncover and discover something. There's a magical element to it. And I didn't really understand what was going on within that scene. Sorry, I forgot to mention, I don't know if I did or not, but I was also listening with the audiobook. So these are some chunky chapters, chunky books, which are chapters, the same thing. So it's like book one and then book one continued, and together it's like a 3-hour span. So I have a lot of notes. I have no designation of when things occurred. So if I say things out of order, I'm very sorry. But unlike Adrian, this is where I disagree with him heavily. I did not like the main characters. Like, there's a lot of spoiler details that I will get into, and I have some wonderful comparisons in other works where they were in the similar situations and handle things completely differently. But semi-spoilery, all of the bad things that happened in the character's life, I directly associate with being her fault. Yeah, sure, there's bad people doing bad things, but like a lot of spoilerific details, things should have gone much, much worse for her based on how she acted. So those are my thoughts. Love the story, love the environment, love the world, love the conflict. Not really a big fan of the characters.
Right on, man. Yeah, I feel that strong feeling for the characters in that first book for sure. Like I said, they did grow on me. Now, I don't think I did comment on the world building. I actually do really enjoy the world that he has created. Like Bethany said, I wish that we had more descriptions on like a scene by scene basis in general. But the man knows how to create a world, man. Like, this is a fascinating world, and he does not hold back on the fantasy elements. The further we go, the more and more fantastical creatures emerge and magic and all that kind of stuff. It's just really, really fun, and I'm into it. It just it took me a minute to get into it.
And he does do the George R.R. Martin thing too, where the magic is really, really light in book one, and then as we get on and on, like
intensifies and grows.
There's a slow rumor of like, hey, this girl was really this girl escaped trouble and she turned into a fish, and that fish is you. But for the most part, it's very, very tame and contained. And then as it gets on, it's like, oh, hey, magic is real, and we are in a fantasy story. Yeah. So I liked how it built on that.
Let's go ahead and address the chat, because right away RC Scott's throwing me for a loop. Is that just because Ben was on screen? Is that where this came from? I don't know what this comment is in regards to. Scott. Felicia's here. Yay. Hi, welcome. And other than that, I think it's just us. So let's wait for people to start coming in. Again, if anybody has any non-spoiler questions, throw them into the chat. We'll probably start shifting into our spoiler discussion in just a minute here. All right. So, excuse me. Two of us did it on audiobook. Then we had a Kindle. Bethany, how did you read yours?
I did audio.
Audiobook as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's.
Go ahead,
I think it's done really well. So those of you that are kind of skeptical with audiobooks, like, go ahead and give this one a shot. Yeah. I think the narrator did a great job.
I'm a really big fan of this one. I've always clashed up against audiobooks, usually because the voice of the narrator just takes me out of the heads of the characters. I gave the A Song of Ice and Fire books a chance on audiobook, and they're narrated by like a 75-year-old man. And when you hear him try to do the voice of a 8-year-old girl, that just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me, and it takes me right out of the story, and it makes it really, really difficult to get into the characters and believe them. On the contrary, though, with this one, I should have written her name down. I don't have her name in front of me.
Gaten.
Thank you. She does a great job of going through different inflections and voices, accents. Even there's a character with a speech impediment, a lisp. She just nails every character really, really well. And so if you are on the fence at all about audiobooks, this is one that I would highly recommend. Very much so.
Yeah, it was really well done.
Indeed. All right. You guys want to just dive in? Let's start talking spoilers?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I love audiobooks, but I can only really listen to nonfiction, I find, and I'm impressed with you guys, because there were so many different characters and things. I found that I kept having to kind of go back a little bit and going, oh yeah, or just taking a second to try to remember who was who, especially as it came into like the third book when more and more people are introduced. So like, good on you. I think I would have been very confused if I'd attempted the audiobook.
I think that's part of.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, she does different, like Adrian said, she does different accents. She speaks differently for each of the different characters, and they have unique voices for all of them. So they were wonderful. The one thing that Adrian did mess up on, though, is he just sent us the press package today, which included the map.
Which is
and
beautiful.
That map would have helped so much going through it.
Let's show that to everybody, actually,
because it is beautiful. But like visioning where they would just say something, and then like later on, books later, I would figure out, oh, that's an island. Oh, that's a city to the west.
Yeah, the whole island thing. I was like, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, the map is definitely a huge help. A huge help. I'm pulling it up right now.
I do love the map.
We'll go ahead and share this right now. Here we go. All right. So, boom. Okay, so if we scroll down, a beautiful book club kit that David Hopkins has created here. He admits that he wastes. He says he wastes too much time on stuff like this. I don't think it's a waste. This stuff is beautiful. He's got pronunciation guides in here. If you're having trouble pronouncing the names, if you're listening to the audiobook, obviously you'll hear them, but that's there. Food. Oh, that blew me away. The fact that he went into like the food of the book. This is real like George R.R. Martin type stuff here, like all the way down to the drinks and everything. Just very, very interesting. A craft project for you to take part in if you want to. It's very, very interesting. Like I had never seen a book club kit before. This is new to me. Anybody else encounter this before with any other authors?
I have seen them, but that is a particularly good one, I have to say.
Yeah, I saved this as a note for like something I want to do, because that's how well done this is. Yeah,
probably like once I put out like a special edition, like hardcover of Shadow of the Spark, I'm probably going to do something like this, with like a map of the Spark and everything, and then another one for the second book with a map of Gaia and everything, because this is gorgeous. This guy, and the simplicity of the cover, I can't get over. It's so good. All right, so let's get back over here. All right, let's get into it. For anyone who has not read it, we are diving into spoiler talk. All right off the jump, it sucks me in with the whole baby in a tree down to the umbilical cord and everything. Like the way that the woman who discovers the baby finds her is like, it really felt real to me. You know what I'm saying? Like she heard it, she followed the sound, it led her right to the tree. There's this whole magical element to it. She has to cut the baby free out of the tree, takes it upon herself to take the baby back, become its guardian. And then when danger arises, the baby turns into a fish and dives into a lake and isn't seen for a couple of years, I think, because when she comes back, she's older already. She's a girl at that point, no longer a baby. So very, very interesting stuff. The character is first named Piper because she was a fish, and later when she's adopted by this very, very abusive tyrant of a woman, she's renamed Silbrey, and that's her name for the rest of the book, Silbrey. There is also a poll in the chat for who we're shipping, because I got into that. So if you guys want to do that, and I have more notes, but we'll get into it. And first thoughts on book one. Who wants to go up? All right, I'll just elect you. Emma, you're up first.
Okay. I really, really love when a book kind of starts from when the main character is really young and you can really experience their childhood. It always reminds me of Jane Eyre, as I think that's possibly like my favorite example of it. And I think it's a great way of really getting to know the character very well in a very simple way. There was quite a lot of telling, as you mentioned, but it didn't bother me at all because I felt that it went with the style of the story. Nowadays, the advice is always show, don't tell, show, don't tell, show, don't tell. But there are different ways of writing, and what audiences tend to go for now is show, don't tell. But telling doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. I mean, if you read the James Bond books, for example, there's so much telling, so much telling, and yet they're hugely popular even now. So definitely wasn't a problem for me, and I did feel that it felt with the whole, it went with the whole kind of fairy tale, mystical element of it.
Yeah. And that's the really interesting part about it to me, is that it really does start out very much like an old school fairy tale. Once I realized that that's how it was reading, I like understood, okay, so this is why it's written this way. But then it sort of morphs by the end of that chapter into like, this is what's happening now. This is what the characters are going through right now. And that's very different than, you know, this happened and then this and then this and then this, as fairy tales typically are. So, it was a very interesting way to like introduce us to the fairy tale elements and then sort of transition into prose and you know, ongoing novelizations. Very interesting. Very interesting. I don't think I've ever read a book like this before. This is so interesting. And by the way, Emma, thank you very much, because now I'm realizing I've never read a James Bond book, and that's a hole that I need to fill. So I'm going to get on that.
There you go. Yeah, you do. They're good fun, but very, very different way of writing to how we generally write today.
Interesting. Ben, how about you? Book 1, chapter 1, spoilers.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think that when you're telling, you know, basically 15 years of a person's life,
like this,
almost a child, almost a teenager, like, yeah, you need to tell us exactly what's happening. So I'm perfectly fine with them sort of just saying like, hey, and then, you know, this happened, and then she got adopted, and then she was unhappy living in the monastery because, again, she is a restless, you know, what was it? A fae, restless fae, and so she wants to be active and moving around, and so she lives on the streets for a little bit, and then gets into the tutelage of, like Adrian said, an abusive woman, where she then learns how to fight. And like, those story beats feel very familiar at times, but it's told in a way that makes it completely unique. You know, there's plenty of stories where you see somebody join a monastery or get adopted into a monastery where they are craving for adventure. You know, that's a lot of classic hero's journey stories start off that way, where somebody is ill content in their lifestyle, whether they are a shepherd, whether they're in a monastery, whatever, and they decide to go out and seek their own fortunes. And then she immediately just ends up on the streets, and then trained as an enforcer by what amounts to a mobster. And that's all I have to say on that. So I really did like how it goes through, it gets a lot of the introduction out of the way. It shows us the key characters, shows us what makes Silbrey, and why she thinks and acts the way she does. So book 1 is a very good intro, but it's told in an engaging way.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a biography, or just an origin story. Like, this is just the beginning in it, and it really works hard to get you caught up to what this character is all about. I find it I can't think of another instance where a Fae character is this much of a warrior. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I haven't read enough of that, but typically, very magical creatures, very elegant, very beautiful, et cetera, very nature centric. And Silbrey is all of these things, but she's also a cold killer, man. Like, she just straight up like murks people. And
she doesn't know who she is at this point. Like, that's also the mystery too. So
also true. Yeah. The moment that really got me was when she grabs the staff out of a statue that's not there. And it's just this like such a magical moment that happens like that. It's two lines, and it's over. And when she tells Dahlia that's where she got the staff, and they look back and the statue's not there, like all of that just adding to the mystery in her own mind of what's going on and who she is and where she's from. I also thought it was really cool the way that like her guardian was telling her the story of finding the fish that turns into a baby and that whole thing. and her, thing, it's a silly story, but like, no, that's you, man. Like, that's what you did. And as the book goes on, and we'll get to it into the further chapters, the further books, the more that she connects with who and what she is, and her nature powers, so to speak, like, it gets really, really interesting, and reminds me very much of somebody in my book. I don't know if you guys
I will say,
put two and two together.
I think it's pretty interesting that in the first book, because we had such a big history to cover, and I really do like the way that it felt very natural in the framing of the story of how we got from point A to point B and back, through the alphabet type thing. But a lot of it was, yes, telling, and I think that was definitely necessary, and I really think it was done well. But it was just interesting that we really didn't get Silbrey's like feelings and emotions and how she was reacting to a lot of this until more into book 2. So like, we see that she's being trained to be this enforcer, and it is brutal and it is hard, and we see that, and we can probably assume what she's feeling. We don't actually know, because Silbrey we don't really get into her head a ton in this first book. So I don't know if that's maybe like a good or a bad thing, if that played well with the character later, or if maybe that was a mistake. I don't know, but I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it lended itself more to that fairy tale narration style, which I also love. I love that. Because it worked. Like, we see the huge world from this outside narrator, and then we're narrowing in on this one character, and then we're in book 2. Sort of. That was a big simplification, but it's kind of where I was at. I think it worked. Was that intentional by the author? I don't know. If it was, props to you. If not, then props to you still.
Accidental props to you. Yeah, no, I again, like, the more comfortable I got with the whole like fairy tale aspect of that first book, the more things like that made sense to me. I very much wanted to get into Silbrey's head, but and we get into it a little more later on, just a little bit, but that very fairy tale like telling of that first book was just it's very interesting. Does a lot for sure. What else do I have here? Oh, the crown of flowers being both a sign of adoption to Dahlia, but also a sign of Silbrey's new status in this town that Dahlia is basically in control of and running. I found that really, really interesting, because as she notes later when she meets Callus, to an outsider, it would almost look childish. But to somebody who lives there, they're terrified of seeing her wearing that crown. You know what I mean? Like, it just means so much to them. And it's scary. She's an intimidating and scary figure to the people of her city. The fact that now, Ben, you mentioned that a lot of the troubles that come her way are her own fault, and I can kind of see things like that, like with her like lying to her husband later on in this first chapter, not giving him the whole truth, not preparing him for the dangers that he was going towards. Absolutely dumb move. Human move, a human mistake to make, but still, she probably should have told him a lot more. That being said, like, those early days of her like ending up with Dahlia and stuff like that, like, I have a hard time like blaming her for that stuff, because Dahlia was just messed up, man.
Sure. And so I don't blame her for anything that happened when she was within Dahlia's care. So she got lured in by this, hey, there's this powerful woman, she's going to train me. Once I say yes, I cannot leave. So then she gets trained to be this brutal killer, basically mobster. And, everything that happens there, perfectly fine, understandable. She was a kid thrown into the deep end and kind of just swam to survive. And that involved learning how to fight and going through and killing people when she had to on Dahlia's order. Everything there, perfectly reasonable under the circumstances. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The trauma that she underwent under Dahlia, I think, is a contributing factor to a lot of those mistakes that she makes later on. So that as well, like, gives me a little sympathy for her in that way. But again, yeah, kind of.
And I understand the desire not to want to tell her husband about, hey, by the way, I used to kill people for a living.
Yeah.
Sure, I can understand it to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna marry the dude, he should know who you are. You know, it's yeah, yeah.
But she wants to leave that all behind, and can she? You know, can she actually leave all that behind if she's telling him?
And I have an excellent comparison,
really,
which I will bring up when we go to book 2.
Oh, ooh, okay, all right.
Oh.
I would probably already agree with Ben with this idea that, like, yeah, maybe she wants to leave it all behind, but if this is going to be your life partner in forging a new life that will be nothing like that one, he should know what that one was and why you are the way that you are, so that he can help you move forward. You know what I mean? Like,
no, not even that. Like, if she wants to just completely ignore her entire past, that's fine. But when he insists on going back to Penderin, that is the deal breaker. Like, that's when you need to be like, hey, listen, bad things happen to me in that city. We'll get there when we get to book 2.
Yeah. Actually, it happens in book 1.
The city where she grows up. How do you pronounce it according to the audiobook?
Oh, Penderin.
Penderin. Okay, because in Wales we have Penderin. It's spelled the same, but it's Penderin. So in my head, I've been going Penderin, and it means bird's head.
Well, let's check out the official guide.
Good. Cool.
One second here.
Yeah. What does it mean, Emma? I missed it.
Bird's head, basically.
Penderin.
Penderin, yeah.
Bird it's like Edarin is bird, so it's kind of like a messed up version of bird, so it's basically bird's head.
So
cool.
Let me see how well.
But yeah, it's Penderin. There's a whiskey from there.
The god before birds, you know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it says in the guide Penderin. Yeah.
But I thought that the audio person did Penderin a little bit.
Yeah,
I thought it was Penderin.
Maybe they.
I don't know. I was also listening to it pretty fast.
I was too. Yeah, I was a little behind. I needed to get caught up. I had it at 1.5 speed. Yeah. Which, having the print copy, by the way, using both at the same time was an interesting little experiment. Like, having her read it very quickly and me just following along, like, it almost like taught me speed reading a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of interesting to do. Might do that more in the future. Penderin, as it is. Yeah. Okay. The magic, and Bethany touched on this, how it starts off kind of subtle and builds, especially in this first chapter or book. It's not just, it's like very subtle and matter of fact. Like, it's just part of the world. It just happens. Nobody was trying to do magic. Magic was just happening. And I found that kind of interesting, because you don't see that a lot. Usually it's some magic wielder who's doing something. And maybe in her case, that still applies, because she is a magical being. She's a fae. But the idea that, like, again, like, she reaches up and grabs the staff, like, it's just there. It just happens. She didn't think about making it happen. She didn't do some enchantment or cast a spell. It just happens. You know, the baby in the tree turning into a fish, like, these things just kind of happen, and it doesn't seem like the characters being proactive in doing it. It's just a part of the world. This magic stuff just happens, and it made me really, really appreciate later on, once we start getting into dragons and goblins, and what was the other one? There was the
gnolls.
The gnolls. Yeah. There's so much going on. So much.
Which is really cool, because that was one of the things where we were very early on told what they look like. They're basically just giant dogs.
Yeah. Oh, and then there's Quixote. Is that how we pronounce his name? I've got the thing here. That's it. Yeah, Quixote. Yeah, Quixote. So Quixote, she refers to him as a Goliath over and over again, and they don't like fully explain it, but yeah, like, they're just like giants. Like, there's a race of giants, and he has like giant blood in him, and he's a very, very large man, and again, just very matter of fact, like, that's just what he is, and like, everybody just knows and understands, and I love fantasy like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like introductory character. You know, the character that comes from the normal world and has to learn about all the magical elements. Like, no, we're just living in this world, and these things are just what they are. And I just really like that kind of storytelling. I dig it. Surprised to see a character named Timon. Anybody else? I've only known one Timon.
I was surprised by Tulane too, because that's a school.
Tulane is a school? I didn't know that.
It's what, Louisiana?
Okay. Meet Cute with Callus was cute.
Yeah, Tulane, New Orleans University.
Nolans?
Yep.
Nolans.
I don't know. That was one of my potentials way back in the day.
Yeah, some of my notes in this first chapter are like, why is he speeding through everything? Even the marriage. Like I was like, suddenly she's married, suddenly she's, pregnant or trying to get, it's just like it's so fast. It moves at a clip, this first one.
Mm-hmm. But again, that feels very fairy tale-esque, where it's, they met, they fell in love, now they're married, and then, troubles start. Or, they had the first kiss, everything like speeds up until the moment when they get their first kiss, and then just everything after it's assumed, happily ever after. Yeah. So that really felt fairy tale-esque to me.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Her confronting Timon about his like abandonment of her was a big moment for me, because I felt like he kind of gave her up a little too easy when Dahlia came around. Then again, Dahlia is super scary, so like I get it, but
he was rubbish anyway.
Right. Also, I mean, that was when she showed her age, because that was when I'm like, oh, this is definitely a teenager, because she thinks that she's being like, oh, so smooth. Mm-hmm. And then the second she talks to Dahlia about it, Dahlia's like, yeah, the guy you've been running around with, I know all about it. Yeah. Shepherd. And, she doesn't, that was a moment where she should have seemed like shocked or surprised that Dahlia knew anything about him. And we didn't really get that moment inside of her head where it's like, oh, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. Chips are falling. Mm-hmm. There was this like 3-way fight, which was really cool. I found that I really, really liked the action sequences and the fights. I thought that they were very well choreographed and very well written. He has a very good economy of word when it comes to his action scenes. Like he's very brisk with his descriptions, and it just makes it really easy to picture everything happening in your head. So big ups to David Hopkins on his action scenes, because those are hard, man. They're hard to get right.
Are we still talking book 1, or are we like into book 2? I'm sorry, it's so hard for me to like differentiate, because I didn't have like that hard copy, so I'm like, where are we? Do we even know when book 2 started? Like what the flip was? Was that when?
So the end of book 1, the last thing that happens, or at least my last note, is the victim from her past, who I guess she killed, Silbrey killed her father, or her whole family.
Her whole family, yeah.
She confronts her, and they have this moment, and Silbrey is like ready for her punishment, and instead she's forgiven and hugged. And that was a huge moment. I thought it was a really, really interesting ending to this first book. I don't know if I would be as big a person as this person was to forgive her for murdering my entire family. I don't know. But at the same time, I wonder if Silbrey's magic has anything to do with that reaction from this person. It doesn't suggest it in the text. It's just something that like entered my mind while I was reading. I was like, I wonder if there's like an influence happening here, like unconsciously from Silbrey. But that's the last thing that I remember happening in book 1, and then book 2 goes back and starts with Ostre, who is the woman who found her originally.
Okay, so then I can say everything about Silbrey at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so to parallel, you have a story about an assassin who was raised as a child, did a whole lot of killing, Rurouni Kenshin. It's a wonderful story. There's some controversy associated with the creator, but either way, it's a wonderful story. And the assassin reforms and realizes that he made mistakes. So he actually uses it's called a reverse blade sword, where the part of the sword they're striking with is dull. And so the part that's facing him is sharp. So if he like loses his conviction during a fight, then he's actually cutting into himself. And then everybody who he would do like these normally death-dealing blows to. He's just hitting with the blunt of the sword so they get knocked out. Now, yes, he's strong enough to technically kill them, but the series, he doesn't actually kill anyone. So you have a trained assassin who has reformed a moment of, this is the new world they worked for, and now there's a new era. And so he goes out on a journey to undo all the damage he caused. And Silbrey never had that moment. She was an enforcer for 10 plus years. She admits to killing people, and she seems to do so without remorse at any point. And that moment where she meets, like, hey, you're a child. I remember killing your entire family. I'm sorry. Like, that just didn't ring true for me. And then the person just hugs her and is like, you were a kid too. It's all forgiven. Like what Adrian said, if we were in that situation, somebody killed my entire family, I'd be like, that is messed up. You should not be out there like living your life. You should be, behind
this is to the
bars.
death. We're throwing
especially
hands.
since like she was there and she found the kids that essentially like killed her husband, and she told them to leave the city because she could not stand to look at them if they made it to adulthood. There's no telling what she would do to them.
And the only reason those kids survived is because they spared her daughter, who should have died in that moment.
Mm-hmm. But I think it also is a testament to how emotionally stunted Silbrey is, in the sense of like, I mean, look who raised her. Like she's cold and aloof, and we see later in book 2, she's like not a great mom in the sense of like she doesn't know how to nurture, especially like when there's this other woman that's there to kind of help out. We don't have enough detail to kind of make a bigger picture, but my opinion and my thought is like she's emotionally stunted, and it's things are very black and white for her. She had orders to follow, she followed the orders, consequences followed like the actions. And then so yeah, that scene at the end where the woman like forgives Silbrey and whatnot, I was like, I felt like this was supposed to come across as like a redeeming moment for Silbrey, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And it almost kind of like,
to me, she was lucky.
It was like a nail in the coffin of like, she has no clue. Like she was just ready to face the music. And then when she's given this forgiveness, she's just like, okay. And then like moves on. And I think it just shows that like, she just has no awareness. And we see that a little bit later, I think.
Yeah. Well, again, and you mentioned it yourself, when you think about who raised her, Dahlia is incredibly cold and I mean, damn near one-dimensional. Like she's just, she's a villain. She's just a straight up villain who just runs the city with impunity. And, when that's your mom, essentially, like what hope do you have of being a good mom yourself, Yeah. I found that very interesting when what's her name? What is it? Damn it. I wrote it down. Marisol. When Marisol comes into the picture and her, Emma, I feel like I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No.
No? Oh, okay.
You didn't cut me off.
Book 2, going back to Ostre in the beginning, I found very interesting. He does this again. I feel like in the next 2, where like questions that I had in book 1 kind of like come back around in book 2, and he kind of delves deeper into that. And then by the end of book 2, I've got some new questions that he delves into those in book 3. It gives this very nice fluid continuity to it. It was very nice to go back and see what happened with her. I did not anticipate the whole like Marisol's connection to us. That's further on.
That, but
like
yes.
That was very, very good.
Yeah,
I found that to be
that was so well done. I really love that.
3 is a cursed number we learn in book 2, and that becomes more and more like a thing that like she keeps saying, like every now and then, like the number 3 comes up, and so it's a cursed number. Dream sex scenes, nice. I'm in. What else? Exploration of Gideon's curiosity about Marisol and Silbrey. I found that very interesting, where like the daughter is like wondering what's up with her mom and this other woman, and Silbrey the whole time is like, oh, my kids don't know what's going on. Like, yeah, they do. they know what's going on. once they start exploring in the woods, I really got into that whole sequence. The way that nature starts playing into Silbrey's abilities starts popping up right there. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
There's a
I
big
really
talk
liked it
between
when she was
Silbrey
in the cave and she looks down. That was really good. And there's like the grass that's grown from her feet. That was very
Yeah. Doesn't the goblin like point it out? He's like look at your look down, look at that flower that
Yeah.
wasn't there before.
He's like,
Like you did.
look at your feet. Yeah.
Yep. And then things like that, like her just going out barefoot and just not even realizing how cold it is. The snow is barely melting and she's out there barefoot. Like she's just of nature and it's just like a part of her. She doesn't even think about it. I found the characters in book 2 very contemplative. They were just like posing like philosophical questions every now and then and just like really thinking deeply about things, or at least communicating about it. I found that very interesting.
Do we know how old her kids are? Because it's like
they're like 8-ish.
That's kind of what I'm picturing, but I don't know because we get like I keep forgetting the daughter's name. Starts with a G.
Gaiden.
She has this huge image of this amazing warrior Bren in her mind, and we see that later. It's kind of shattered, and so like I'm trying to picture like, okay, I could see like 8 or 9-year-old like having this like picture of what she thinks the world is. She's been isolated on a farm, and then really her first experience out in the big world, she sees her father murdered and she has this traumatic journey back. And then the next, introduction to this big world, they're fleeing these monsters and, this army of called out of the woods type thing. Like she's got it rough, and still she has this like image of who Bren is, and then seeing Bren in her sad, sorry state. I don't know. I thought that was just very interesting. Like, because this is all third person, but I feel like we got a little bit of a picture of like what life is like through a child's eyes through her. And I'm starting to, I didn't really enjoy her storyline very much, but now I'm definitely more into it as we get further into the story with her.
Yeah.
And
her fearing like her warrior mom was a big thing too that happened in that chapter. Like she just gets a glimpse of who her mom really is, and she's straight up scared of her. It's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. I think Gaiden is 8, and then the son is maybe 5. I thought that like 5 or 6. I think
he ages up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I thought they were a bit older than that actually, but I don't know why.
I was picturing them older.
I kind of had the girl is about 10 and the little boy is maybe like 7, something like that. But I think that's just what I got in my head. There's no evidence for that.
Yeah, same. I pictured at least Gaiden. I pictured to be somewhere within 10 to 12. Her being 8, like she seems very mature for 8. Mm-hmm. I have an 8-year-old. He doesn't talk like that.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like it's hard for me to know because I can see both perspectives and I just don't know where we're going. But we might get more details later.
Indeed. We meet our first goblin. We mentioned that in the cave. Silbrey's talk with him felt like a really big moment for me. Like as far as like the whole fantasy stuff goes, like it really felt like he turned the knob up to 11 from that moment forward. Like I mean, because after the goblin, then we start seeing dragons. We start seeing all kinds of stuff. The description of the dragons really, really interested me. The fact that they fly without their wings, they use their wings to like bank and turn, but their levitation is magical. Like they can just hover, and just a very different idea of like how dragons work in this one. I really, really like that, and how small they are at first, and the way they communicate. Very interesting stuff. Would you guys say this is omniscient narration? This is omniscient narration, right?
I thought it was like rotating third person limited.
That's kind of what I was thinking, because we do get like pretty big chunks from the POVs. Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
you could make an argument for omniscient, but I'm erring toward the third person limited.
Well, I think the reason that it stood
Yeah.
out to me as omniscient narration because there's a point where something happens behind one of the characters, and like the narration tells us what happens, and then explains that the character didn't see that happen. And I'm like, well, that's omniscient narration, you know, like
Right.
he's telling us about something that the character did not experience. You know, what are you
But we
doing?
also get a little bit inside their heads too, so it felt, I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I feel like that's one thing is even in like traditionally published books, we can see how narration maybe can go outside the boundaries for a little bit. It just slips through editing. Maybe it's a stylistic choice, but yeah.
Oh, it absolutely worked. I liked it. It's especially in a fight scene, it makes sense of like, hey, behind you, this really cool thing is going on, and then continue fight.
Yeah.
So I had no problem with that.
Yeah.
There's a moment of trees shifting to create or obscure the path, and that's a great trope that I love and have played with in like short stories that I've written in the past. So it was nice to see that. And then finally, Silbrey, like at the end, telling her daughter pretty much everything, like finally coming clean to somebody. You know, a little too late for Callus, but
Yeah.
she made the effort to come clean with her daughter and really tell her what's going on and who she is and what happened to her, and that shows a little growth in the character, I think.
Yeah, but she still didn't say about her girlfriend, though, did she? Which would have been handy.
Her
Given all the
girlfriend knows
details
more than
there.
she's putting on. All right.
She
They
don't,
have
yeah,
that-
but like she should have said to her daughter, like, look, this is what's going on. This is what I found in the house, so that so that her daughter's prepared. She's supposed to love these people, and she's not sending them out into situations with the information that they need.
Right.
It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I guess I can double back because I never actually said this, but she was working for Dahlia for at least 10 years. And so she should know, like, hey, if Dahlia says, do not do this, you do not do this, or you will suffer the consequences. And Dahlia says, outright, like, do not come back to the city at all. And then she just kind of assumed, like, oh, well, I'm an exception, and she doesn't know what he looks like, and this, that, and the other. And it's been X many years since we were there. So that's why I feel like Silbrey is the one responsible for her husband's death more than Dahlia. And yeah, I got to head out in about 5 minutes, but
Oh my God, it's almost 5 already. I didn't realize.
I know, I got to get back to work. But yeah, there was another example of Silbrey being just not the best mother, where she left when Gaiden gets kicked out in front of her hero. Like, that is a devastating moment for a child. Even if she's 12 years old, like, that is still soul wrenching. And there was no one else there to like look after her kid. So Silbrey didn't bother chasing after her. She didn't bother doing anything. She just kind of let her daughter be dismissed and then just sits around drinking for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh, she'll be okay. Calm down."
Well, and I can understand the point of like she can sense what her daughter is doing at that moment, so she can see, sense her well-being, and so she would know if she's in physical harm or immense distress. But it still is like the daughter is kind of alone in a city and just got soul crushed by her hero.
Well, and I think it just goes back to Silbrey's like true lack of like. Not that she lacks emotions, it's just, again, just very like black and white compartmentalized, like, oh, you were rejected, go deal with your rejection. Like, that's like been her life. Like, but then again, you have to realize like it's been 10 years and you would think that maybe she would have like processed or learned or something, but we really didn't get a lot in the 10 years from book 1. It was just like, she got married, 10 years later, they need to go back. Like, so that's the part where I'm like, a little bit more description would help. But I kind of see like Silbrey is not that she's like a terrible mom, but I just think she's doing the best with what she has. And unfortunately, it's not that great. Yeah, so I wasn't really surprised by that, but I think it's one of those things that makes a good, unlikable character. Like,
and I completely agree.
Yeah,
there's reason behind it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Ben, I know you got to run. Give us really quick your thoughts on books 3 and 4 so that everybody knows how you stand on those.
Loved them. We are getting up to some really climactic moments. I thought it was awesome how the island, the safety net or the safety protocol was to just blow a horn and every single boat like leaves immediately, and everybody who doesn't get off the island is now trapped there. That was really cool. I thought that was, again, this world is so well thought and well developed and so interesting. I was very confused though. How did Dahlia support Kret? Like, we're just kind of told, oh, by the way, Dahlia is, supporting Kret's revival because she's a guildmaster and he, she's funding his war effort. But I didn't understand how the two actually met or planned this out. Because there was some precise locations that were needed, and it would have had to come through Bren's son. Because as far as I could tell, there's only 2 people who knew that Kret was still alive. It was Bren Caius, and then her son, who was trying to overthrow Bren Caius.
I didn't clash up against that as much. Now that you bring it up, I find myself asking that question. But I think like during the reading, if anything, it probably felt like when she knew about Callus, like she's running the place. So she has her spies, she has her, her, what's it called? Her informants. And with the money that she's got, like, I don't know.
But no one knew about Kret. There were only 2 people. And then shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, right. And so Bren doesn't decide. Bren sees passed out Dahlia on the floor after the fight with Silbrey. And she's like, well, this is a guildmaster. I can't arrest her at this point. I know she's killed a whole bunch of people. I know she's done a lot of bad things, but she still is like keeping the city together. So she's fine. And then once she kills Callus and Silbrey goes through, she's like, oh, well, she killed Callus and we got to arrest her now. But like, what about all the other families and the citywide control?
I wonder if he'll be revealed later on to have been a double agent of some sort, because that would ultimately be the only explanation, him being the only person who knew, and then him being in a position to be able to do something about Dahlia and choosing not to, until somebody's standing in front of him going, well, okay, I guess we have to. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he's playing a part and not...
no, that was...
I don't know.
That was Brent. Brent decided not to arrest...
that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, because you said him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant her.
No worries. But we don't know because she's Yeah. Or I guess we've gone through enough spoilers.
Does that bring you all the way through book 4?
I think so, because we are set up for a very interesting showdown. There's a city under siege, and I am excited to finish off the book.
Yeah, once we got into like battles and like being on ships and stuff, like, man, boy, was I like having a good time with this. It really felt like old, like Game of Thrones type stuff, Battle of Blackwater.
And that's the thing. So now we have, like, I am rooting for Silbrey and Marisol because they've kind of made up now, although there still is a level of untrust.
They're working on it.
Yeah. So I'm rooting for them as characters, and that is where the sympathy is kind of coming through for wanting them to survive. Oh, yeah. Actually, well, yeah. I guess I did kind of peek at like a page ahead. Because we as of the end of book 4, we don't know.
We end on a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
we end on a pretty big cliffhanger. Yeah, no, it's all good. No, the reconnection with Marisol starts in book 4. So yeah, I think you're good. Cool. All right. Well, dude, thank you very much for joining us as always. Yep. I know you got to run. Have a great one, bud.
Yeah, back to work, and I will let you know how the rest of the books go.
Oh yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into it next time.
Thank you and enjoy.
Thanks. All right. We can back up a little bit to book 3. Let's see. So my first note is book 3 has gotten epic as fuck. The ships, the fights, the magic, it's all happening. Silbrey suspecting Marisol actually made me really sad. Like Silbrey's like frightening intensity in Marisol's eyes was just like kind of heartbreaking for me. That was a big moment for me with the characters, I think.
Especially when you get to know like Maricel's like background, like soft spoken on a farm, like very innocent, and this was like her quest, and it's more than love, it's also her like quest to
it's like her purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Whew. What else? My notes get less and less in books 3 and 4 because I was vibing with it so much. I was just reading. Ben already mentioned it. The whole thing with the island, everybody all the boats bailing, the ones that are left, all that stuff like really hit home. It was really good.
It was very, very well done, and I was more than happy to keep reading. You know, it wasn't a problem to keep reading at any point. There wasn't any bit that I kind of thought, oh yeah, I'm done now.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered.
Yeah, I was never bored. Yeah, I was never bored and never felt like, especially in that the first book moving at such a clip, like really like makes it like I almost felt like it was diving into the deep end of a pool. You know, like you just get sucked right into it, and you're in deep waters right away. So that by the time you get into the more like actual day-to-day story stuff in the books 2 and 4 and 2 through 4, like you were already just so sucked into the world and so invested. I really dug it. Any other notes for book 3?
No, I mean we were just cruising along.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I was very much in love with books 3 and 4. I like I said, I barely wrote anything down. I want to touch on the whole like the religions and the gods, the named gods, and how like the way that somebody dies determines which god claims them. That whole thing was really cool. I dug that a lot. That's that beautiful world building that he's got going on in here. The magic finally intensifying to like ridiculous heights. The fate of the world becomes a real concern by the end of book 4. Like they're actually talking about the fate of the world at this point, and it feels epic and just wild, man. Like wow, good stuff. Silbrey finally learning about Austri from Maricel, and the confirmation that the fish story was real, that it really happened, that that's who she is, that's where she's from. Like all that is really, really cool because again, she's been doing all this crazy stuff without knowing who and what she is, and now that she's learning it, like I can't wait to see where she goes with that. You know, like what does she search for from here on out? You know,
I think it's interesting though, like Silbrey, like she kind of had that like inkling of like you're Fae from the conversation in book 2 with the goblin. But she was just kind of like, I don't know, but I can't discredit it because I do have this weird magic that I'm trying to figure out. And then the confirmation with the whole like fish story, I expected something emotional from Silbrey, but she seemed very flat with all of it. And I think that could also be a testament to how overwhelmed she is. She has this huge responsibility that she's just taken on in the name of Bren. I don't know. I just thought like, you know, we in those Chosen One stories, we have like the Chosen One finding out they're the Chosen One, and it's like this big deal. But but Silbrey's just kind of like, interesting. That makes things make more sense, and that's kind of what we get from it. Like,
yeah. And that lends to the whole like just matter of fact nature of the fantasy elements and the magic in this world. You know, like nobody butts up against the idea of dragons and goblins and all this stuff. So like, but when she finds out for a fact that this is what's going on with her, it's like you said, like, oh, that explains a lot. Like suddenly so much makes sense.
I wanted to know more about the earthquake, because that was like, the earthquake was a massive thing and it's felt separately by kind of 2 sets of people. But what caused, I'm hoping that we find out kind of what caused that earthquake.
He set it up a little bit he set it up a little bit. I
Yeah.
believe it was in the previous book where he mentions that the whole city is like built on birds or something like that. What was the explanation? Something about it being like birds underneath, and when they flap their wings, that's an earthquake or whatever.
That's the whole. It's the whole world, isn't it? That's. I thought it was the whole world that has the birds underneath it, like the different continents or something.
Yeah, that's right. They were talking about like the different continents. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, but it seemed like it was such a significant moment that it happened at. So I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Is that because she's kind of taking over? Like I thought, is it because she's kind of taking over from Bren? Was it like a kind of symbolizing like change or something?
So in other words, was it a natural occurrence or was it a magical occurrence? You know, like that. There we go.
You put it better than me. Thank you.
No, I got to where you were going. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, Emma. I get it. Ultimately, I feel like I had kind of a rocky start to this book in the beginning, but again, by book 4, especially that cliffhanger ending, like I'm in, man. I'm really, really in, and I can't wait to dive into the rest of it.
I agree, except for I didn't even think the first part was rocky. I just kind of wish we had a little bit more detail, so I wasn't guessing so much with certain things. But in the end, totally can get past it. I want to know what happens next.
Yeah. And I believe that he wrote these as these standalone novellas that he released individually, and then eventually put all together into this novel. So that being the first one that he wrote, the one that he put out so long ago, it definitely feels like he's honed his craft a lot more since then and just become a better writer by book 4. I feel like you can see the growth in his writing from books 1 to 4. Any other thoughts on the Dryad's Crown, the first half of the Dryad's Crown? Bethany, you have the most well-behaved angel baby I have ever seen.
It took her a minute to go to sleep, but now she's asleep.
Yeah. And you're talking right in her ear. She's like, whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sleeping.
It's all good. Yeah, no, she's fine.
Love it. Babies. Oh, I'm bumping into stuff. Okay, Emma, how about you? Any other last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Just that I really wish that there were chapters in these books, and I don't know why. It just really bugs me.
Yeah,
please, why on that? I don't know. It's just me. I don't know. It's kind of because what I expect. I'm like, I want chapters. I don't know. Is it the justification? I finished a chapter. It's it's so long between books. I need something to keep me going. I need the chapter breaks.
I feel that. I feel you. Yeah.
It's the decision that he made, and that's. I'm really looking forward to getting back to it, but I kind of feel that because we're not meeting for another couple of weeks, I'm like, I should probably leave it for at least a week so that it's still fresh in my mind. When we
That's
talk
exactly
about
what I'm thinking.
It's going to be 5 next time. We did 4 for this one. We're doing 5 for the next one because there's 9 total. Yeah. So keep that in mind too. Maybe start a little earlier than you're thinking, just in case. You don't want to read 5 books in one day.
I was up until 2 a.m. reading it this morning. So.
Yeah, I went to bed at 2 a.m. To get through to the second book, and then today I read 3 through 4. So. Mm-hmm. But again, thank God for that audiobook, man. He really hooked us up on that one.
That helped. It did help.
Yeah, I'm just such a procrastinator when it comes to this stuff because I have so much else going on that making time to sit down and just read for pleasure is just how.
Yeah, it's important. It doesn't help that it's height of NaNoWriMo season for a lot of us. So
yes, and I am so not winning NaNoWriMo right now.
It's okay. I'm gonna totally pull an all-nighter one day, or just I need 2 10K days. I just need a weekend of just being absolutely insane to catch up. But I can do it.
Yeah, I'll probably get my hands on some Adderall or something and just really knock it out.
Well, you know what you wrote, maybe not, but that's okay.
Oh man, but yeah, but like you, I just need a couple of catch-up days where I can just pull an all-nighter and just knock it out. Okay, well, those are our thoughts on the Dryad's Crown. For my panel, please next time we get together, 2 weeks from today, bring your nominations for the next book. We will announce the nominations at the end of that episode. And then when we interview Mr. David Hopkins, we will announce the winner of the next Tuber Book Club read. Let's give you guys a chance to do your little outros. Bethany, why don't you go ahead first? We'll go in reverse order.
Hi, my name is Bethany Vota. I write some short story collections and thrillers. They're all under this name. And you can find me sometimes on YouTube. My phone camera actually broke. So I'm getting a new phone sometime this week because I have some fun YouTube videos I want to film. But yeah, thanks for letting me hop on your stream, Adrian. I always have fun here.
Always nice to have you. You're always welcome. Every time. Forever. Emma?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on your channel again, Adrian. I have had a lovely time. I have a YouTube channel myself, if you want to go and check it out if you haven't already. And I also write kissing books generally.
Kissing books. Everybody, I'm Adrian Santiago. This is my channel. This is my book club. It's fun stuff around here. We support author tubers. So do it. That's my book. It's a poster, but I wrote that. Go buy it. It's also over there. I'm ubiquitous. All right. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for being here. And we will see you guys right back here in 2 weeks for the next episode of Tuber Book Club. Next week, I am talking to Lane Trumpeter, an author that I met at the book convention I went to earlier this year, who writes these very awesome fantasy books. And I can't wait to talk to him about those. So join me for that next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Right on Writers. We are out.